Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. My name is Sue Kelly, and I'm a behavior therapist with the Child and Youth Mental Health Program. Um, and I've been around for a long time, 20 plus years at the hospital and over 30 or 20 plus years in the community. So hopefully we'll be able to shed a little bit of light on this topic for you tonight.
And I'm Michelle. I'm a child life specialist. I've been working in child and youth mental health for over 13 years and with the hospital for 20. And just remembering that this is information that will help the general population. We can't get too much into your individual questions, but we will do the best that you can. So, yeah, we can get started.
So everybody experiences symptoms of anxiety, and they're usually fairly short and they don't often cause significant problems because anxiety is just something that we all experience in our human experience, right? But anxiety can really become a big issue when it's persistent and when it starts to combine with our thoughts and our emotions and our physical sort of sensations that we have as a result. And then our behavior patterns start to get in the way of how we perform our daily tasks and how we interact with our daily things that we do, whether that be going to school or activities or socializing and trying to interact with friends. Okay, so that's when we know that we're starting to have a problem, when our daily lives are starting to be impacted.
So, anxiety is an overestimation of a threat and an underestimation of the ability to cope. And then we get the anxious response. Everybody responds differently. They can respond with that fight, flight, or freeze. Some children mix it up. Some are a little more consistent. But depending on your child, we have to try to understand how they respond to anxiety and get in front of it. And we want to start preparing them and giving them the tools instead of protecting them, keeping them home, and allowing them to avoid things that cause them anxiety.
So, as I was saying, anxiety really is a normal reaction to a real or a perceived threat to either your physical or your emotional safety. And it's really an appropriate, essential emotional response because it enables your child or yourself as an adult, even, to protect themselves, right? So it's that alarm bell that goes off that says, hey, something doesn't feel right here, something's off. Something feels like it could put me at risk or in danger. So we want them to have that alarm bell because it lets them know that they need to maybe move out of that situation, maybe ask for help, and sort of find a different way of doing things. Behavior and anxieties change though with age and developmental stages. So we need to understand how children move through, what's an appropriate and expected anxiety that they may experience. And they may very well grow out of some of those as well as they change.
Yeah, so some of those normal fears, for little kids, it's those loud noises, strangers, being away from parents, preschoolers, maybe the fear of the dark, monsters under the bed, school-age children, fears of imaginary creatures. So that happens up until 10, sometimes 12. If they're still believing in Santa Claus, they still believe in imaginary creatures. School-age children have a lot of other anxieties as well. This is just a very short list. As they start getting older and getting into that preteen, teen, then we have those injuries, death, natural disasters, social situations. They have more access to information, so they look things up, they hold on to information, and they interpret it the way that they want to, and usually the anxiety catastrophizes things. So there's many components of anxiety. We have emotion that comes up. We have physical sensations like stomach aches, headaches, vomiting, crying. Then the thoughts, I can't do this, something bad will happen, I'll be embarrassed, I'll get in trouble. And then we have the behaviors. I'm going to melt down. I'm going to refuse to go. I'm going to shut down. I'm going to sleep. Um, I'm going to constantly ask questions and beg my family not to take me. And they all just feed into each other. So it's being aware of each component. And this can only be done with older children. Over the age of 7, they can start helping to share their thoughts. Under the age of 7, this is a lot harder. So as adults, we want to try to anticipate what those thoughts may be, but it's not a skill that they would necessarily have, because it's really difficult to be able to understand what those anxious thoughts are. But we can try to anticipate what's the worst case scenario for them here. What are the thoughts?
So, speaking of thoughts, there's a lot of thinking errors and distortions, and they generally are expecting the worst to happen, and they're predicting that it is actually going to happen, right? So they focus on the negative, they get stuck in very black and white thinking patterns, they tend to overgeneralize, they mind read, so they think that if this happened here in this situation, it's going to happen in another situation. And even with very, very young children, I know that, Michelle was talking about, you can't necessarily get them to that point of identifying their thoughts, but sometimes you can sort of take it outside of them and get them to sort of think about a character or a cartoon on TV or from their books, if a character had something happen to them, what might they be thinking or what might they be feeling? And then sort of bring it back to them. Has that ever happened to you? Have you ever felt that way? Have you ever experienced that? So if you can bring it outside of a young child to bring it back to them, to have them reflect a little bit, you might have a little bit more of a better opportunity to explore sort of those thoughts, feelings, and that connection with younger children. For
We
the
talked about it.
emotional, yeah, you already sort
Go
of
ahead.
addressed this, and this is not a conclusive list by any means. There are lots of emotions and things that come up, right?
And the physical sensations as well. So some things you can see, some things you can't see. Um, and a lot of it is brought on by these emotions and these feelings. Just because they have a stomach ache, it doesn't mean that they have the flu. Just because they throw up, it doesn't mean that they're sick, but it is a real feeling. And then this is what happens. And then we have the
So the
behavior along with it.
oh,
Oh, we've got a delay. I'm always ahead, so I'm waiting for you. Go ahead. Go ahead, Sue. Go ahead.
So the behavioral responses again, the key one I think primarily with anxiety is about avoidance. I mean, ultimately that is the goal for somebody that's struggling with anxiety. If I can avoid the situation, everything's great, right? As long as I don't have to do the thing or go to the place or be with the people or do what you're asking me to do, I'm fine. I'm not going to have a reaction. I don't have the thoughts. I don't have the feelings. I don't have the physical reactions. Everything's good. The world's rosy. So if you find that the behavioral response is primarily around avoidance, chances are, we've got kind of a bigger issue going on. But there's all of these other behaviors that tend to sort of pop up as well. So they're seeking more, reassurance more often. They need that constant, what's happening? When is it happening? Or they may become, more withdrawn. They don't necessarily want to go places, be around people. They may get more agitated. Their reactions may be bigger than what would be expected for a situation. They may be sort of presenting like they can't sort of sit still or they're not comfortable in their own skin. Sometimes we see some kids revert back to sort of those less mature habits as well. Increased behavior problems like biting, kicking, argumentative. Some kids act out more. Some kids become a little bit more sort of reclusive, right? that clinging behavior, trouble eating, relaxing, sleeping. These kids are on all the time. Those alarm bells are just ready to roll. They're ready. They're on alert. Like think of them as, if you're at like red, yellow, and green all the time, these kids are constantly in the yellow. They are ready to go. So they never get down to green. They don't know what it feels like to feel calm. They're always having that agitated sort of sense of feeling in their body, where their body's, already feeling like, the adrenaline is pumping, the hearts are pumping and beeping, and they're just ready to move and go. So they don't really ever feel that sense of calm and relaxed and being a sense of ease. Inability to concentrate. How do you concentrate and focus when you're feeling agitated and you're feeling like constantly the world is a fearful place? Really tough to do. When you have all that going on, it's very easy to become very forgetful as well. And they may drift, they may become daydreamers, they may feel more confused and very hard to make decisions about things because again, where am I going to go? What am I doing? Yeah, I would rather just avoid. So lots of behavioral things that sort of evolve and come out of this. Okay.
So some of the ways that we can kind of understand our own anxiety, where our children are coming from, where our teens are coming from, is thinking about these thinking traps. And as I go through them, if you want to take note and write them down, yep, that sounds like me. Yes, that sounds like child number one, child number two. It helps you understand what the thought process is like, what the anxiety bully in their head may be saying, and trying to boss back those thoughts will be helpful. So one of the things is the fortune telling. This is when we predict that things will turn out badly. I know I'll mess up. I'll never be able to manage my anxiety. Or the black and white thinkers. This is when we only look at a situation in terms of extremes. Anything less than perfect is failure. So does that sound like you? Does that sound like your child? Then we've got mind reading. That's when we believe we know what others are thinking and we assume they are thinking the worst of us. Others think I'm stupid. She doesn't like me. Or filtering. This happens when we only pay attention to the bad things and ignore all the good things. So if you did, so this would be more of an adult example. If you did a poor job on a presentation, you think you did a poor job because some people look bored, even though people came up afterwards and said they were really interested, lots of compliments. We just focus on the negative. That's that anxiety thinking trap. And catastrophizing is when we imagine the worst possible thing is about to happen and we predict we won't be able to cope with the outcome. I'll freak out and no one will help. Should statements. This is when you tell yourself how you should, must, or ought to feel and behave. I should never feel anxious. I must control my feelings. And then we put more pressure on ourselves and our anxiety. Overgeneralization. This is when we use words like always or never. This type of thinking is not helpful because this is not the way that life works. It's not that way. Do you always make mistakes? I'm never good at public speaking. Like never? Never once have you been good at something? It's always bad. Labeling. Sometimes we talk to ourselves in mean ways in a single negative word. So I'm stupid. I'm a loser, whether you're saying it out loud or saying it to yourself. So again, keeping track if any of this sounds familiar. And an overestimating danger. This is when we believe that something unlikely to happen is actually right around the corner. I will faint. I'll go crazy. I'm dying. It is a lot to think about. So we're just going to put a little poll up, and we're interested to know what thoughts are coming up. What are your thinking traps? A lot of children that have anxiety, have parents that have anxiety. It's not a judgment call, but you can relate to it as well. Okay, so this is just something to be mindful of for yourself so you can be more aware. Children learn what they live, and when they notice that you are stressed out, that you are catastrophizing, that you are mind reading, that you are doing that black and white thinking, they see that you're in distress. And then they think, oh, wow, my parent is in distress. Something really must be bad. And some children are going to learn this is how we deal with emotions. So, again, it's not about judgment, it's just about awareness. Okay?
And this is really showing that there's a lot of like anticipatory, we call it anticipatory anxiety, right? So it's that, that fortune telling and mind reading I think it's going to happen. I think it's going to happen. It's going to happen. So again, if you're putting those intentions out there, then chances are it's going to happen. So, you know, there's lots of that
Yep.
in the
And
room for
if
sure.
you have a lot of these checks, you're not going to just have one. That's an anxious brain. And same with your kids. And it's just helping you understand why they're exhausted, why they're constantly ruminating, why they're constantly looking for reassurance or trying to avoid things because they believe that the worst is going to happen all the time. And if we allow them to avoid, if we say yes to the anxiety, that's when we start telling them that these worries are true. So we have to prove to them that they're not. And even if bad things happen, is it as bad as you thought? So it is quite a process, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that, Louise. Do you want us to hit end poll? Okay.
Okay. And now your kids. So what about for your children? What do you think? We're going to put up another poll for your kids.
Wow. So we've still got a lot of that anticipatory, but we've also got a lot of that sort of
Mm-hmm.
overestimating. And we've got lots of black and white thinking. So the kids are really
Mm-hmm.
locked in,
Yeah.
really overestimating the danger. Yeah,
Okay. Thank you.
interesting. So that's more just for you to see that number one, you're
Mm-hmm.
not
Mm-hmm.
alone too, as well, in this as well. So you want to be aware of your own emotional responses and reactions because anxiety really brings up a lot for you as a caregiver, right? So think about, when you're dealing with your child, are there things that are coming up for you that make you feel uncomfortable about managing that anxiety? Um, do you think that there's a more likely explanation for maybe what they're experiencing? Do you feel like maybe other parents or caregivers might feel the same way that you do?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like, to be honest, most kids really can read their parents like a book, but they often are not very accurate at interpreting like your expressions, your tones of voice. And they tend to be much more negative. So they'll take little pieces. Anxious children will often take little pieces and extract out little parts of adult conversations that they might hear, and they distort them and they blow them up and they catastrophize into stories. Um, that are much far worse than what they actually heard, because they don't necessarily understand. They took it out of context, um, and that's kind of what happens. So they really don't interpret expressions well, but they are very keen on paying attention and very alert to reading the room and reading tones of voice and stuff like that. But the match doesn't go with, the sensitivity, if you will. Okay?
So I think going off of what Sue had already said, how is the anxiety affecting your child, the family, the schooling, their education, their involvement in the social world? And I know right now is a difficult time, but we still need to give them opportunity. These are the kids that need to go to school, that need to go and see their friends, that need to keep those connections, because it is very, very easy to quickly shut this down, stay in, not do these things. So of course we need to do this safely, but the harder, it's really hard when you don't go to school for a long period of time to go back, right? If you don't see your friends, if you never answer a question. So how do they continue putting themselves in those situations where they can practice? So how is this actually affecting everybody? Are we accommodating the anxiety? Are the other children in the household feeling resentful of it because we can't have fun? We can't do things. Is the anxiety running the household? Do you feel stress because of it? Is it splitting you and your partner because you both are looking at it differently? These are all things to take a look at. And it's really important that everybody is understanding the anxiety and that you're working as a team against the anxiety instead of the anxiety running the household.
So this maps onto what Michelle was talking about earlier, and sort of how we start to tackle the different components of anxiety. So when we look at the thoughts component, what we're doing is we're trying to challenge those negative thoughts or unhelpful thoughts, if you will. So when they're thinking that, the worst is going to happen, I'm going to go to the park and the dog's going to bite me, we want to try and challenge that thought to a more realistic thought, like, the dog is on a leash, or the dog is with its owner and the dog has a muzzle on, and I'm on this side of the park and the dog is on the other side of the park. So you want to try to go to more of that sort of realistic thinking, helpful thinking, detective thinking, whatever you want to call it, to try and challenge that thought process so that they can try to shift into a more positive sort of emotion. If they can shift that sort of thought process, then they'll have a decreased anxiety, response. Their emotion won't be as intense. But when we look at emotions, we also are talking about children that don't have a huge emotional vocabulary, an ability to express and identify their own emotions, others' emotions, as well as sort of like facial recognition, body talk, body language. So you want to do things to expand anything that you can do. Play games, word games, emotion games, talk about emotions. You can download emotion wheels from Google. There are Google images about emotion wheels. Mad, Sad, Glad, and Bad is great when your children are 2 and 3, but you want to start to expand their vocabulary to include more depth, to explain more colorful to words to describe sort of how they're feeling in their world. Um, when we talk about the physical piece, I mentioned that these kids are on alert all the time and they generally don't know what that calm feels like. So we try to introduce them to different forms of relaxation skills. Now, this is very personal, and it's very individual, but there are all kinds of different things and techniques out there that you can try. There's breathing techniques, there's meditation, there's mindfulness, there's even just using any kind of calm down centers, coloring, reading, listening to music, going for a walk, having a bath, whatever it is that your child feels that they like to do, have them involved in trying to decide what activities help them to feel that sense of calm and relaxation. And that's going to help to build that. You can't do it for them. And it's certainly not something that you're going to decide in the moment. You want to
Mhm.
plan this
And
ahead of
there's a
time.
question of,
And for the behavior part,
sorry, go ahead. There's just a
oh, sorry,
question just in regards
go ahead.
to when you're talking about the feelings and the child wants to avoid the conversation, or talking about the anxious response and that they don't want to talk about it. And that's avoidance because more emotion comes up. And it also could be that as the adult, you're saying it's fine. And that's part of the emotion piece, is that allowing the child to have emotion. A lot of us were brought up, leave your tears for your pillow, suck it up, you're fine. So we actually are uncomfortable with emotion ourselves, and to have somebody else be distressed, our child, it brings up emotion in us. So we throw a lot of butterflies and fairies at it. So holding space for your own emotion may have not been something that you've learned. Now we have to teach our children how to do it. Then we have to be comfortable with their emotion and our emotion. And then when we bring up, we need to get this done, we need to go to the park, the dogs are fine, you've never been bitten, does the child feel like you're just coming at them with your own rationale and just saying, it's fine, so don't worry about it. So I actually don't want to talk about it. There's lots of reasons why children don't want to talk. Avoidance is one. And the other is that they don't feel heard, and they just feel that there's just a lot of rational reasoning thrown at them when they're being very emotional. And this is a big thing for them. And you don't get it. So what's the point talking about it? Okay, something to think about.
Yeah. And this comes with the exposure piece, with the behavior, right? We don't throw kids into the deep end at the pool and say, "Here you go, figure it out," right? There are steps that we go through to be able to teach them to be able to
Mhm.
swim in the deep end. So why would we do that with a child that's experiencing anxiety, whether it be dogs or needles
Mhm.
or whatever it may be? So we're going to take gradual steps, and it may be just that we're researching something online. We're looking up about
Mhm.
different kinds of dogs, and maybe we're spending some time driving by the park and maybe just looking at dogs from inside the car. We have our own dog. Maybe we're learning and doing some research about the dogs. So there's lots of things that we can do to take those gradual steps, to expose them, to start to make it a little bit more comfortable for them to be able to make those gradual steps to get to the goal that you want to be able to get to. But there also has to be some buy-in from them too. So what is it that they want to be able to do that they feel that they can't do right now? And you're not likely going to start with the big stuff. Let's just put that out there. You want to start with some smaller things that are maybe a little less intimidating, that you're going to hopefully get some buy-in from them. Something that maybe they would like to be able to do, and that they're saying, yeah, I want to be able to, or I'd like to try this. And then they see that there's some success that they're having, and then they'll be more willing to maybe try some of the harder steps. But it's slow, it's painful, and you have to really acknowledge the efforts that they are making. This is very tough for them. They are battling their brain, the thoughts that they're having, they're battling the emotions that are real and valid for them, and the physical emotions that are being experienced in their body when their bodies are vibrating and they're feeling heavy and their hearts are racing. Those are very real sensations that their bodies are feeling. So this is tough work for them. So we have to take our foots off the gas. As adults, we have to get our heads out of our rational brain and put it into their little emotional brains, because that's where they're functioning, and that's what Michelle was trying to focus on when with what she was saying. So all of this works hand in hand, okay? And it's hard work, we get it. And this is just an intro to kind of give you an overview.
So we were talking about that detective thinking, and so this again, you can't do this with young children. This is at least 7 and up that you would be able to really break things down this way. But it is important for us as the adult to understand it. So the situation is, again, the dog, all about dogs today. The thought is the dog is cute, then I feel calm. The dog is going to bite me, then the feeling is scared and anxious, and the behavior will match the feeling. So again, when you say, don't worry about it, the dog is fine, yeah, but I've had a bad experience, or I don't know this dog and I'm nervous about this dog, and you tell me not to worry about it, then I have more thoughts, then I have more feelings, and then I have the shutdown, or maybe I'm going to act out. I'm going to run away. I'm going to kick you because I have had enough and you're not hearing me. So it's messy. Like Sue was saying, it can be painful. It can be really tough. So we are doing that detective thinking for our child if they're too young, or we're going to invite them to say, where's the proof to say that every dog we see is going to bite us? Because I'm a little confused. We went to the dog park yesterday and that was okay. But today you're saying you can't, right? So I'm a little confused. But I have to really believe that. I really have to be genuine with my child, because if I'm like, I don't get it. Yesterday you were fine. Now today all of a sudden you don't like dogs. They feel it. They're sensitive. They're trying to understand and they need someone to help them. So we're going to work through it. But to be able to get them to open up, to be able to get them to really understand what's going on, we have to be able to meet them where they're at. So that means going in with an open mind and being calm ourselves and trying to put yourself in their shoes. So you can use examples like this. Sue had said earlier, sometimes you can do that with little kids, but you can do this with anybody really. So if the dog or if the cat is up in the tree, what are some of the thoughts that they might be thinking? I'm going to be stuck up here. I'm going to starve. A bird is going to come get me and peck at me. So they can kind of do those things. So you can use situations like that, situations that actually happened with them, their siblings, on TV, in a book. And these are some examples. So the situation is the child is laughing. The kids are laughing as she walks by. Well, what could possibly be the unhelpful thought? Oh no, they're looking at me. I must look stupid. They're laughing at me. Well, what can she say to boss it back? We've got the unhelpful thought. What would be the helpful thought? They're probably laughing about something funny and I just walked by. I actually don't know that they were laughing at me. Okay, so this is the compassionate and also helpful thought of, let's think about that. Let's do some detective thinking. How do you know they were actually thinking about you? That you happen to walk by, does that mean that everybody is talking about you? And sometimes it's taking that next step, because those are your friends. Are we actually going to go and say, hey, what's going on? What are you guys talking about? Or were you laughing at me? And having them be able to talk about that with their friends to see what the response is. Okay. So these are things that you can do on your own, right? And we've got a little handout for you that you can do these things with your kids.
Just a couple of questions, Michelle. So there's one about, the child not wanting to sort of go into the water like in a tub, but is able to go in to swim. Um, so I would still focus on maybe challenging the thoughts and be asking about, so what makes this water different in the tub, and maybe explore, like, what about water in the sink, and what about water in the shower, or what about water like when we wash dishes, and explore like the different types of water in the house, and find out like, well, what is the difference? But not in a judgmental way, but just say, but my concern with that also is that
Mm-hmm.
we need to wash our bodies, right? So we need to find a way that we can wash our bodies, but we need to figure out what it is that's stopping us from getting in the tub. Is it just behavior? Because we obviously know that he can get into water, right? So it sounds like there's probably a little bit of
Mm-hmm.
behavior there, that's, more oppositional than anxiety, but I would still try and explore it and challenge it, but I would try to compromise around what your concern is around that, and that you need to
Mm-hmm.
try to negotiate,
Yeah, for sure.
right? And then it was, what can you do with an older child who can argue or justify their anxiety in any situation and gets angry?
Well, why are they getting angry? Because they may feel judgment from you. They may feel that you're not understanding it. I mean, I can say 5 more minutes and then it's time to go to bed, or I can say five
Yeah.
more minutes, then it's time to go to bed. Two two exact same phrases, but it's how I come across. So you may feel like you're frustrated, like you're sick and tired of this. This is ridiculous. We need to talk about this. And then you get triggered and you hear the shark music and you're not able to be empathetic with your child. So you might need to take breaks. And where are you coming from? Are you coming from what's concerning you, or are you coming from what's concerning your child? So, we can't go over all these things in these sessions because there's too much to do. Um,
Older child, what's the
yeah.
relationship like? If they're a teenager, like, there's lots of things that can be happening between a parent and a teen, in terms of relationship, and them feeling like they need to have more privacy. Like, there's lots of things that can be
Yeah.
going on there as well. Um, but again, like Michelle said, probably a lot of the validation is a big issue, and not necessarily feeling like, even if they did say something, that they would be respected for what they shared. And it's not judgmental that we're saying this. It's because we
Mhm.
see this a lot. Parents will say that, like, oh, that's ridiculous, or, that's not necessary, or you don't need to worry about that, like, but the thing is, the point of
Mhm.
this is that they are, and they do. And that's what you need to be able to say, like, wow, I didn't realize that. I didn't understand that you were feeling that upset about that, or that was bothering you, or that tag was making you so itchy that you didn't want to wear that piece of clothing, or that you didn't want to, get in the tub because, that soap or shampoo that we were using was making you feel icky, or slimy, or something. Like, maybe that was what was bothering you in the tub. Like, it could be something very valid, but they're just not being able to express it to you, and we might be just sort of pushing it off and saying, like, come on, like, just do it and get it done already. Like, what you're saying
Mhm.
is ridiculous. So you really have to kind of take your foot off the gas and try to think, how can I maybe try to look under the iceberg here a little bit, and figure out what else might be driving this behavior that I'm seeing, and the thoughts, and really try to reconnect with them. But you're not going to do that
Mhm.
in the moment, folks. Okay, this needs to happen like on a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday, where you're sitting down and it's quiet, and you're having a hot chocolate, or you're having some quiet, like not in the moment, okay? Not when people are heated and kids are agitated. Don't try and have these
Mhm.
conversations at that
Yeah.
time.
So again, more about the positive thinking, focus on your child's strengths, increase positive interactions, acknowledge efforts, Have your child use those positive affirmations themselves. So again, training their brain, because we're always looking at that negative, but also for ourselves, looking at the effort. What have they done? And I feel like we're arguing about this every day. How can we move forward together? What would be supportive to you? What if I walk you to school halfway? Or the first day will be all the way, the next day will be halfway, and then you can go on your own and you can practice on the weekend. What do you think about that? So again, meeting them halfway, let's work on this together. And like Sue said earlier, they have to be on board. This can't just be your agenda, and maybe starting off with some simpler things. Okay. And here's an emotion wheel that we talked about. So opening up that emotional vocabulary. When you can name your emotion, what can you do to tame it? So for each emotion, they may need something to work on that will help calm that down. And being able to acknowledge emotion and say, I'm feeling frustrated. This is what I need from you. It looks like you're feeling frustrated. Do you need some space? Do you need some hug? Do you need a hug? Those are the kinds of things that help someone feel supported when they're in their crisis. It's not about solutions, especially not in the moment. It's about acknowledging that emotion, getting them to be aware of their emotion, and what do they need for that emotion to turn it down a notch. Because we're not expecting that emotions are being wiped out. We just want to help them turn it down a little bit. Okay.
I've just put in a few courses, but you guys can check out our website, and I know Louise will I give you the link for our website to registration. But I've listed a few courses based on some of the comments that have come up of some of the courses that might be helpful for you guys, okay? And the physical relaxation skills, again, lots of choices, as I mentioned, again, really personal choice for you to pick things. But again, have your children be part and parcel of this, because it could just be that they like to color, play with some, maybe kinetic sand or Play-Doh, or maybe they like some paints, or like to listen to music, or maybe they like scented stuff, maybe they like fizzy stuff in their tub, or maybe they like crunchy stuff and they just want to sit and doodle or do something, quiet by themselves. Figure out what it is and talk with them. What do they like to do? Talk about what it feels like. What do these emotions even feel like in their body? So how do we get from like a 5 to a 3 to a 2 to a 1? Right? So if they're not aware of where they're feeling, how do we even get them down, right? And we're not going to go from a 5 to a 0, right? It has to be a gradual thing. Okay? And think about that for yourselves as well. Just putting that out there. You guys need to de-stress as well.
Some fun things to do. Make it part of the routine. This is not something that you're doing in the moment. Now we're going to go for a walk. I mean, it may be helpful if you've planned on this, that your child feels better when they're active. But if you're stuck in the house all the time and then it's like, oh, another day just went and we've been inside all day. Well, let's make this part of the routine. We have a break at this time. Let's go for a walk. Or after dinner, we're going to go for a walk. What are those things that you can incorporate to do at home? And what can they then transfer when they go to school, they go to a party, they're on the bus and they're feeling anxious, they're going to write a test. These are all skills that you're teaching them while they're calm. So when they start feeling the emotion come up, they feel in control, and we're not jumping in to fix and rescue for them. We're allowing them to feel the emotion, and then what can they do to turn it down a little bit?
I was talking about this a minute ago about the emotions, and it's just a little sort of body outline that you can have your kids sort of pick emotions that they feel on a regular basis, and they can color it in on the body, right? So how much scared do they feel, and how much worry do they feel, and how much maybe overwhelm or maybe even happy. Let's throw happy. Let's throw in some good positive emotions too. Maybe I feel excited, right? And how much excitement do I feel in my body? Maybe is it a hand? Is it a whole arm? Maybe my, worry is just all up in my head, right? Maybe for others it's down in their legs. So it gives them a visual tool to be able to sort of take it out of their mind and be able to sort of put it in a format that they can actually see the emotions and how much it might be filling up their body. So it gives them a tool to work with.
And these are the gradual steps we were talking about. And, what are those steps moving forward, working on those things together? So if we are wanting the child to try new things, maybe order their own drink at the restaurant, what does that look like? Maybe the first time they're just going to point to the donut that they want. The next time they're going to order two things. So practicing, and we're not doing this 1 week and then the next week we're going to wait 3 weeks to go on to the next step. We're trying to do this as as not too quickly, but quickly enough that they're not stuck on that step. And what does that look like? That's going to be different for every child, but working on this together so they feel like they're part of the plan instead of this is what we're doing and this is how we're going to do it. They're going to be more willing to try things.
And I mentioned about taking care of yourself, and this is really important. Michelle and I try and weave in a little bit of this to most of our workshops because self-care isn't a luxury, right? This is just basic maintenance for caregivers. You have to be able to take some time for yourselves where you can, how you can. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be complicated. It can be, can somebody trade off with the care of the kids? Can you take some time to have a really nice bath or a shower for yourself? Can you take some time to read a book or read a chapter? Can you get up maybe a little bit earlier and, maybe have your coffee and maybe do a gratitude journal in the morning before you start your day, before the kids get up? Maybe you spend a little bit of time doing something for yourself at the end of the day before the kids or after the kids have gone to bed. And I'm not talking about doing the laundry or cleaning the kitchen. You know what? If you've got sticky floors, they'll be there for you tomorrow. They'll be waiting for you. You don't have to clean them every night. Take the dog, go out for a walk, get yourself out and go for a walk. Just get out and get a little bit of fresh air. It's really tough times for everybody, and we need to spend some time being able to take care of ourselves because we're not going to be able to give what we need to give to anxious children, particularly. They require a lot of you, and they are going to drain you if you do not fill up your reserves. So practice, do what you can, where you can, try and fit something in a little bit every day or maybe a few times a week at least. Find your support networks, touch base with friends, family, whoever you feel are your supports, and reach out as well because you've got to have a place to diffuse.
So we just have a few numbers for you here. And again, just different places where you can get information and take more courses. So we hope you found this helpful. This is just, the tip of the iceberg. There's many other things that you can learn about. And sometimes it's reaching out and getting that support that you need for yourself so you're better able to kind of support your child. So take care and thanks for your questions.
Thanks so much, everyone.